Those who dream of African beer will think nothing of African beer. That'll probably be tariffed. Well, it's time for another deep dive into the Nintendo Switch Online service. Or I guess now it's called the Nintendo Classics, isn't it? Well, I'm not sure if that applies to today's subject matter. Big Run, the Supreme 4-Wheel Drive Challenge, 13th Rally, Jaleco Rally, something or other. It's a mouthful of a title. Released in 1991 for the Super Family computer courtesy of Jaleco, based on a 1989 arcade game of a similar name. Big Run has you driving a car in a rally, taking you across the African continent, and your ultimate goal is to make it to each leg of the trip before time runs out, all the while maintaining your vehicle as it takes damage due to wear and tear. You start off by picking a sponsor that will provide you with funds and parts for your racing endeavors, and from there you can hire a crew comprising 3 roles. A navigator that will steer you in the right direction, a mechanic that will effect repairs to your vehicle with whatever parts are available and purchased from the shop, and a support staff that will provide support. That is to say, you can hire these folks or you can choose not to. Make your decisions now because you won't be able to go back to fill staff later. In any event, whatever remaining funds are left will be used to purchase whatever parts are needed to maintain and repair your vehicle as you get farther into the circuit. Conceptually, it's not a bad idea. It's a rally race with several legs when you're not trying to beat anyone to the finish, you're just trying to reach the finish before time runs out. In a sense, it's similar to perennial NES classic Rad Racer, except you also have to maintain your vehicle to keep it in working order because if anything goes wrong, you'll need to summon emergency services to do emergency repairs on the road, and that'll cost you time. You can also carry parts on the road to effect needed repairs on the fly, but this adds weight to your vehicle, which affects your top speed. Ultimately, it's all about being able to manage your resources in order to complete the rally in one piece, in addition to making your rounds on time. Again, conceptually, the idea is sound. In practice, however, Big Run has some major problems, most of which stem from the rather choppy frame rate, inconsistent collision detection, and generally poor scaling of objects, or lack thereof. When driving at high speeds, it becomes a bit of a mess to keep track of what's going on, especially on roads where you're driving at night or when you're out in the open, which makes the navigators particularly useful tools here. Speaking of which, you have several people to choose from who vary in salary in terms of filling the various roles, but there's no real indication as to whether the higher salaries results in more efficient results. Would buying a cheaper navigator give you the same kind of help as a more expensive one, or is there an extra benefit in spending the extra bucks? There's no real way to know unless you have the manual on hand, which I don't. And there's no in-game way to know if any of these people bring any added benefit that justifies their salary, quite frankly. Control feels a bit clunky at times, but for the most part is generally responsive. The computer-controlled vehicles, on the other hand, are another story, coming across as somewhat incompetent drivers who are tipping themselves over, have no clue whether they're driving straight or zigzagging their way to do. Some cars will be off-road doing nothing, they're just sitting there. Most of the time it just feels like I'm plowing through these tracks and hoping that everything works out and I make it to the end before time runs out. It's less an exciting rally racer and more of an exercise in frustration. How long can you last before the jank eventually overwhelms you and you give up? Visually, Big Run is a cross between bland and dreadful. Granted, there's only so much you could do with desert terrain to make it interesting and distinct across your almost dozen stages, but it still looks dull. The car designs are interesting to say the least, but the scaling is piss poor. Again, only so much you could do in adapting an arcade game with some impressive visuals on a system that couldn't hope to match it, but not only do you have piss poor scaling which messes with the depth perception, and thus the collision detection on top of that, but the frame rate is also pretty dreadful, resulting in some atrociously choppy graphics. Granted, this came out in 1991, but this also came out after F-Zero. Hell, Enduro on Atari runs better than this. Absolute fail, must try harder. The only real high point, if you want to call it that, is in the audio department. Mind you, the sound effects are rather ho-hum, the engine sound is rather weak sounding and such, but at least the music isn't too bad. variety of highly energetic tunes that's only hampered by somewhat weak instruments at times, and probably nowhere close to being as good as anything you get out of the Top Gear games, but they're decent tunes regardless that fit the mood. I didn't mind these. These are fine. Overall, Big Run 4-wheel drive Supreme Challenge 13th Rally, whatever you want to call it, is below average racing fare on the Super Famicom, marred by poor scaling, choppy frame rate issues resulting in some spotty collision detection problems. There is promise of a semi-decent game to be found here, but some of the technical glitches really put a damper on the overall gameplay experience. In other words, it's the perfect game for Nintendo Switch Online. Something you'd load up, play for a few minutes, and then promptly forget about soon afterwards. Outside of that context, Super Famicom and thus Super Nintendo has plenty of great racers that blow Big Run out of the water. You really need not apply it to this rally.